Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Zer0es TV. I'm joined today by Ćosović, the founder of Breakout Point. If you're not familiar, Breakout Point is an online service that tracks both retail sentiment in meme stocks as well as activist short reports as they come out and as they age over time. Ivan, thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you for having me, Max.
All right. So I gave a little bit of a teaser into what you do at Breakout Point, but I'd love to get it straight from the horse's mouth. What do you think you do? What service do you provide?
I mean, you summarized it well. So basically, we are data and analytics provider sitting here in Germany, in city of Düsseldorf. And our services revolve around big shorts and meme stocks. So from one side, we will be tracking what activist short sellers are doing, when they publish something, when companies respond and so on. And from other side, more recently, we started tracking what retail investors are doing and which meme stocks are emerging, which are fading, and so on.
So I have to ask, were you tracking the short sellers first, and just as time went on, you realized you couldn't track one without tracking the other?
It was precisely so. We started with short selling, and then these interactions between short sellers and retail investors became so relevant last year with many stocks that emerged where short sellers were also paying a lot of attention, that we said, let's track the meme stocks as well. And that evolved into the full-blown services where we provide, live overview of what's going on in this space.
So when you're tracking, say, obviously with the short seller campaign, the report comes out, you can determine how the company responds from their own documents, and as well you can track the prices. But when you're tracking meme stocks, are you looking at sentiment on popular boards? Are you looking at options flows? What sort of data are you providing to your customers?
Yeah, on our side, it's mainly about collecting the chatter and evaluating, estimating the underlying sentiment. And we collect chatter across, many different public sources where retail chatter happens. So that goes much beyond just your standard Wall Street Bets subreddit.
All right. Well, that brings up a question. So who are most of your customers? Are these small hedge funds? Are they individual investors? Who's utilizing this?
It's a mix, basically. So we do have on both ends of spectrum clients, also professionals, and let's call them semi-professionals, some smaller entities, but also the retail investors that typically either want to know what short sellers are doing or want to know what their peers are doing.
Well, that is a small group of people. Usually it is the short sellers themselves and a long holder who has found themselves on the wrong end of a short seller report. But how did you end up tracking this sort of thing? Because it is a very small niche community.
The short selling, it is, but then if you amend that with retail activity, then it becomes a huge multi-million community. But short sellers or active short sellers are on their own a niche, but they are very impactful niche. As you know, many stocks violently move following the reports, typically down, but some of them also move up after the company responds and so on. So it is a niche, but a very, very volatile niche, I would say, when it comes to activist short sellers.
Well, I have to ask just a little bit personally, like you're not a professional short seller. So how did you find yourself seeing this as an opportunity? Was it just seeing that volatility both to the down and upside around these short seller reports, and you felt that there was something that needed to be tracked?
Yes. So, I'm lover of data, lover of unusual data, lover of, peculiar movements and so on. And this did attract us to short selling part. And retail investors with meme stocks and meme stock movements are kind of, in that sense, a very natural extension or very good complement, better to say, to what's going on in short selling world. Meme stocks, they go up, they go down, they plunge, they rise again, they fade in retail interest, come back again in interest. So many violent moves there as well.
All right. So I wanted to shift now to one of my favorite things about Breakout Point, which is your weeks in review. You do a great job of tracking what has come out, what has worked over different time scales, if there's any trends in terms of people going after the same companies or going after sectors. And so I'd like to turn this conversation less to a general assessment of Breakout Point and more to what you have seen in the market over, let's say, the last month. We'll start on the short side. Short sellers had a tremendous time at the beginning of October, but really things started to turn in the middle of October with a lot of things starting to move against them. When you look back over what we've seen now, recording this, it's sort of the second week of November. What have we seen over this back half of October and really the beginning part of November?
Yeah, indeed. For the whole month, so for past 30 days or so, we've seen about 20 major new short reports. The most successful were actually those targeting, focusing on these smaller meme stocks. So we have seen a lot of success for Kerrisdale with Camber Energy, the meme stock that went up prior to the report several 100%. Then a lot of success for Culper and Culper Research and their focus on DatChat stock. And finally, White Diamond focused Nextplay, so another stock that is in sub-billion segment that was in a lot of focus of retail investors. But, not everything worked. And also we have seen a very peculiar development recently with first focus on an Australian stock following the guidelines that were issued by a financial advisor there on how activist short sellers should go around with publishing their reports. So basically among these guidelines is that the short sellers shouldn't be using too emotional language, that they should publish outside of trading hours, and there are several other guidelines. So it was very interesting to observe, J Capital publishing a report outside of the hours, company then being able to halt to the stock, to provide response, and only after all of this developments, the stock resumed trading. It did go down following that. I think on the first day closed about 16%, and it is yet to be seen what happens next. So very heated atmosphere there in Australia with the latest short report. So that's been on our radar as well.
Well, and as well now, J Capital is being sued by Vulcan, and they're being prevented from republishing or from really commenting on their report until the lawsuit has been clarified.
Correct. That was the latest kind of development on this particular campaign.
Well, you're tracking ideas, short reports from all over the world. Is this something that you have seen in other jurisdictions? When you think about looking at short selling from a geographical perspective, are there any trends that you've noticed in your tracking of all of these short reports?
I think this was a big development in Australia. So with these new guidelines, and other big development which came last year was Wirecard case, and how the kind of environment and how people here in Germany look at the short research changed following the Wirecard. So that was a big change. It was not a formal change in terms of new regulation, but more of the acceptance of what short sellers are doing. And we have seen much different level of acceptance of the follow-up or the reports that happened and were focusing on German companies after Wirecard case. But Australia is indeed in these terms different.
So I want to focus then a little bit on your assessment of 2021. Earlier this year, obviously, you had the sort of beginning of the meme stock phenomenon, short sellers getting squeezed, obviously huge funds like Melvin taking it on the chin. And you even had some people in the media talking about the end of short selling, the death of short selling. Since then, SPACs have let out a lot of air. But we have seen meme stocks return. In your assessment of the year of 2021 for short sellers, has it been their year or has it been the year of the retail traders? Who's really in the lead here?
I think it's two universes that coexist and occasionally clash. Not always, but regularly they do clash, but they do coexist, and I think that will remain to be so, in spite of what some in media were assuming that it's the end of big short selling era and so on. Actually, following the January meme stocks and so on, we have seen so many successful reports. So many stocks going down following the reporting and so on. So we have seen actually enormous amount of success on activist short selling side. Yet again, both universes do coexist, and there has been recently more interaction between two worlds. So for a while it looked they are out there, but the meme stocks are not necessarily in the big focus of short sellers. But these three cases that I mentioned earlier, so Kerrisdale, Culper Research, and White Diamond, they did focus in October on very notable meme stocks. So that did kind of bring these two worlds again in collision course. So let's see how that plays out. On the meme part, there was a lot of focus recently on these specs again. So specs are again big in retail world. That kind of all started with this so-called Trump spec, so DWAC that got in a lot of retail focus, but focus on that quickly morphed into more general focus on different D-specs, and they had quite a bit of success there recently. What's very interesting is that this time around, in spite of spike in focus on specs, we are not seeing so much focus on king of specs, on Chamath, that's been on the Google Trends, not as present as before. What's also interesting, short sellers are basically saying, bring it on. So they are basically, happy with the new spec issuance. They're focusing with their reports on companies that came to markets via specs, and we have seen big rise in that during 2021. So I think 28 new reports were issued this year focusing on specs, and this is compared to only 6 in 2020. A lot of that is due to the specific spec structure, due to the success they are achieving in this area, and so on.
So as well, in terms of tracking the individual ideas, the types of ideas that are working, you keep track of the individual short sellers and you give them a bit of a scorecard for how they're doing this year. Who right now is putting out the largest volume of research, and then as well, whose research is being the most hard hitting?
Indeed, we do track that, and when we looked at the end of the Q3, basically we noted that Hindenburg is doing very well. So they had 8 reports out with average decline at that time of about 40%. Wolfpack had 4 reports with average decline of 50%. And the third one, which was very, very interesting, was smaller activists, so lesser known maybe, Night Market Research with 4 reports and average decline of almost 60%. So that would be 3. We have more in our report, but that would be 3 that I would point out here right now.
So I think we've covered short selling pretty well here, both on the short term and on the year. But what about the meme stocks? Obviously, GameStop, AMC are the names that come to mind when most people think of them. But since then, the term meme stock has been applied to really anything that just happens to squeeze on retail popularity, even if it isn't as ubiquitous as GameStop and AMC. So in your tracking of meme stocks over this year, how have they evolved? Where is the memeability coming from? And are there any trends that you think are important for both short sellers and just individual investors as well to pay attention to?
The AMC, GME are indeed, and other bunch of these stocks are what we call OG meme stocks. So they happened in January. They kind of put the meme stocks on the main stage. Before them, we had several other stocks in 2020, including Hertz, Bankruptcy Place, and so on. But kind of these OG meme stocks, AMC, BlackBerry, and the GME, brought this segment to much more attention than it was previously been. Similar to short sellers and the media headlines about short sellers, end of era, we have seen so many headlines about end of meme stocks. And yet again, every time there is a new meme stock, retail investors are back there. They are looking at the new name or are reverting to an older name because of a new catalyst and so on. Also, the narratives are evolving and changing. There is always this underlying, or very often there is this underlying narrative, and that persists of high short interest, short squeeze, but there are also many other narratives and many other events that retail investors keep on looking at. Currently, it's a lot about these specs, as we mentioned, and with Trump spec that brought specs back to attention. A lot about what retail is looking at is on EV stocks currently. Metaverse is a topic, is a narrative currently among retail investors. So the narratives do shift, and we do see not just focus on peculiar individual names, but also the names among this particular narrative that is being focused at by retail investors now.
Well, it's really interesting what you say about narrative, because I feel like with GME, there was a highly quantitative case being made by a lot of people out there about the short squeeze dynamics. And you could argue there it was a highly sophisticated thesis in reality that was being perpetuated by some of the people sort of at the top end of understanding in that GME squeeze. Since then, a lot more has shifted into narrative. Have you noticed that it's become more of a narrative game and less of a quantitative endeavor like we saw with GME?
Sometimes it's about how sustainable this or how memeable this stock is. So we usually say, so many things are being thrown around and thrown at this, retail wall or Wall Street Bets wall, and only few things stick around. So the stronger maybe the narrative, the longer the stock will remain around, because the segment of retail investors is also becoming more and more. I would say they're learning more and more and are becoming more sophisticated. So maybe some narratives are not so easy to persist as they were in the past. So there is a bit of that, but nevertheless, there is always yet another new stock that pops up on our radar, is there for a couple of days, has incredible moves, and then disappears from the radar.
Well, I want to talk about that, how they appear, how they disappear. Is there any quantitative studies that you have done on how quickly something loses its steam? What is the average cycle like for a meme stock?
I mean, there are meme stocks that keep recurring also months after. So we recently had BBBY returning to the meme scene just a few weeks ago, and kind of sympathy plays to this OG meme stocks was a number of other meme stocks. So you have those that persist almost for a full year, but typically this is something that we note for several days, and unless if it is a really recurring topic such as EV stocks that recur, like specs now, they were popular earlier this year. Now again they are popular. The big names such as Tesla, Nvidia, NIO, recently Ford. So these names are that kind of persist for many weeks or many months, but are not necessarily what you would design as traditional meme stocks. So we have seen Moderna being ultimate vaccine stock for many months among retail investors, but they kind of also got disappointed with the recent developments and are looking at some Pfizer and some other names much more than that. So these things do evolve also as the fundamental circumstances around the stock evolve. And it's also a lot about the price action. Does the chatter and the level of focus is being supported by positive price development? And if there is not much of that, the focus fades much quicker than on those names where there is a supportive price action.
That is a great question. What comes first, the chicken or the egg? Is it retail interest or is it price action? Is it price action that pulls in the retail interest, or is it retail interest that's driving the price action?
We have seen both. So
Okay.
we see both cases. We see retail reacting to price action, or typically some event that causes price to move, and they some cases widely jump on the board of this price action and probably contribute to the further price developments. But we have also seen the cases where the retail narratives start and retail chatter starts bringing this stock to the main stage. And sometimes it's hard to say. So again, a prominent recent example has been DVAC, so the Trump spec, and it was kind of simultaneous. There was this news about involvement of Trump, and then retail chatter started with that. Prices started jumping. Then there was this sympathy play, funware that retail started looking at, and that was more driven by the pure sympathy and expectations that this stock is then connected to the main event, which was the VAC. So we have seen everything, to be honest, Max.
You use this phrase sympathy play. That's a new one for me. So are these the meme stocks that are like, if you loved Hertz, you'll really like Avis or something similar sort of thing? Are they always in the same sector? You can easily put the same narrative on it. What makes something a sympathy stock?
Yes, so this would be then, and that's what we are also noting quite a bit in this retail investors multiverse. If a significant name starts trending and starts achieving big success, many will be looking at the peers or what I called sympathy plays. Will be looking at what are other opportunities, what could also be affected by that stock, maybe not to the extent and not move as much as the other one, but yet react to the positive developments in this EV stock or positive developments in this metaverse related stock or this, whatever the main focus and narrative is, people looking at what are other stocks that could or should move alongside this stock. So this is coming then towards the sector focus where stock got so much retail focus that retail also starts thinking very quickly, usually, especially if the main stock starts moving quickly, looking at stocks around it and if there are good candidates to move together with this one.